Here we are again, everyone. Lucky number 13. Revolutionary ideas of 2025. And today we're diving back into some of these specific ideas as opposed to looking at the levels of education that we've been reviewing the last couple weeks. So we're all about feedback today, and it's appropriate for this 13 number because some people are scared of the number 13 or it's associated with horror movies. And let's be clear. Most people, when it comes to the process of feedback, giving it or receiving it, it can feel like a horror movie. So first things first is we need to recognize that feedback loops keep good systems going. I would go so far as to say feedback loops, initiating feedback loops, could even help to course correct some systems that are not working as smoothly as we need them to be. Feedback number one, though, is continuous. They're loops. We talk about feedback loops, so they need to be continuous. Hard to build, I know. 2, feedback is a process, and we have to admit that it's hard, right? Not only on Friday the 13th, it's hard all the time. So it does need a guide, right? The third point that I want to talk about today. First, the continuation loops. We are so often focused on the summative forms of feedback, right? Like you work. And then at the end of the year, you get a performance evaluation and you get feedback from your boss. Or after like 6 months, your manager checks in with you and says, hey, how did that half a year go? Or you have a 3-month probation period with a new company and you don't hear anything until the end of the 3 months. In education, we do it just the same, right? In high school and elementary education, they do something, students are working on something, and they don't realize they're getting feedback until the end of the product, the performance. And thus, it kind of falls on deaf ears because I did it, I'm finished. What do I need the feedback for? It seems kind of perfunctory. And that's one of the reasons why I think feedback gets this bad rap as being criticism or punitive, because it comes at stages where you can't actualize it. You can't act on it. You can't do anything meaningful with it. So it comes across as feeling like, okay, well, I did the best I could, and this is now my grade, as it were. Not fuel for continued learning. No, we have no choice. Feedback is coming at us all the time, whether you're in schools or in the professional life or you're in a relationship or you have family and friends. We are getting feedback. These feedback loops exist in our lives in so many different ways. So, how did that dinner party go? Or what would I do differently the next time I talk to my friend about a difficult topic, or I approach something with my romantic partner that I need them to pay attention to, or I need a change in behavior and I approach it a certain way. Like, how did that go? Feedback loops are everywhere, so we need to better understand the nuances associated with feedback. And a personal experience of mine that I want to share is through the PhD process. Now, I am going to go on record and be recorded and say that one of the only beneficial, or let's not say only, let's say most beneficial learning experience in the PhD program I pursued was the dissertation feedback process. So you had to get a committee and you have different people on your committee, and they advise you to get different people who can provide you with varying types of feedback. So I was doing a statistical analysis. You get someone who's really good at stats. I was doing a mixed methods research design. You get someone who's familiar in mixed methodologies. You're working with authentic assessment practices. You get someone who works in that area, the use of technology and community and so on and so forth. So you purposefully, intentionally curate the people that are providing you with feedback because their opinions matter in a unique way, right? Too often, I think we say, okay, we need some feedback on something, and we haphazardly ask someone who's closest or ask someone we trust who might not have the skills or expertise that would best serve the iteration of that work that they're providing feedback on, because that's what I found. It was so hard to receive feedback as an ego-based human. And to be honest, they're not taught, the advisors on my committee were not taught, as are most subject matter experts or people who work with doctoral students, taught to deliver feedback in a humane fashion. Comes at you fast and furious, not sugar-coated in any way. And so hard to hear, but the material was the better for it. My dissertation, my ideas, what was put out into the world, my skills as an education researcher and educator were greatly improved by the insights offered by these folks on my committee. And I really took away from my PhD work that the value of feedback is in its iterative process, is in this continuation, is in this loop. They looked at it over and over and over again at different points. Different folks looked at it at different points with different lenses, with different asks. Can you do this for me? This continuous feedback loop means that the feedback coming at you is no longer summative. It's a starting point. It's a starting point for iteration, for improvements over time, incremental. And it comes at you in chunks. So it's not overwhelming because it's coming at you bit by bit by bit. Now, in a lot of formal education systems, we can look at, like in this 8-week course that I teach right now, we have one assignment and it's scaffolded over the 8 weeks. So they have 3 submissions, but it's one assignment. It's one thing that they're delivering. But I've scaffolded the assignments so that they build on one another. And ultimately, the third assignment is accumulation of the second one first, and so on and so forth. So we can scaffold. We have this more project-based, performance-based, portfolio-based way of looking at our assessments. And we can then break it down into smaller chunks that allow us opportunities for feedback. And it becomes a loop, a process, ongoing. Not this summative thing you get at the end that you're not really sure what to do with and it feels very critical. So let's talk about how hard it is. Leads us very well into how hard it is, right? I found it very difficult as an ego-based human being, as we all do. Educators and learners tend to have, when we're talking about educational structures and designs, integrating feedback on assessments in these spaces often have different problems for educators versus the students. So educators, I don't have the time, energy, or resources to provide iterative feedback. I have way too many students in my class to do that at scale. I am in a bit of a skills deficit in terms of what I am able to do in terms of providing feedback. So I don't really know if I can provide really meaningful feedback iteratively. Depending on the skill sets that you're looking at providing feedback on, you might not feel like you have the skills to do that. So what are some solutions or strategies? Because that's real. That's the truth of these large class sizes and overwhelming curricular expectations that you're supposed to get through in a very short time period. Could you have an interdisciplinary assignment that accounts for multiple units, which then you could do iterative feedback like every 2 weeks there's something that they're submitting and you're covering multiple units in one assignment, right? Checking a lot of boxes off at the same time. If that's the problem, could that be a potential solution? Could you use these kinds of micro, less formal feedback opportunities like tickets out the door, 2-minute reflections? Could you also potentially look at recording audio or visual formats? Because I know for myself, like when I text my friends, I'd rather leave like a 3-minute voice note for a lot of reasons rather than like try to bang it out in a text or write it out in a text message. So how can you leverage audio, visual ways of recording feedback that can reduce the time load required for that kind of iteration? How can you also leverage AI or your LMS? There are opportunities within different LMSs like Canva, Google Classrooms, Moodle, where you could, on assignments, record feedback in line with the assignment and make it more accessible and user-friendly in terms of how is that feedback getting to the student and how do I do that in a time-efficient way? Leveraging the LMS channels you have for feedback, looking into that in terms of what's capable in your LMS for feedback, iterative feedback, and then AI, right? So let's say I really know that skills-based criteria is important. I want to measure my students' ability to communicate or to empathize with their audience or whatever. I want to include that in my rubric. And then I'm going to give them a summative grade because I'm not really sure what I'm going to say to gradually, incrementally prompt them towards growth in those skill areas. Well, AI is really good for that, right? Upload your rubric, upload your assignment description. And even if you're behind a firewall or there's potential to anonymize your data, you could upload a couple assignments and ask for prompts, but you can just do it without any assignments anyways, and just say, given this rubric and this is the assignment, provide me with a set of 5 or 6 prompts to get a student from a level 2 to a level 3 in this category, from a level 3 to a level 4. If someone scores a 4, what would I say to help prompt continued growth? In that way. So you could use AI. It's wonderful. Again, it's a starting point. It's not a summative tool. You would look at it, make it your own, make sure it's in your voice, and then you can copy and paste it. Because, right, we do display, learners at scale do display similarities, right? There are patterns to gaps, and so there's patterns to feedback, and there's nothing wrong with copy and pasting things in that regard. Okay, students, big stigma, right? Oh, I really don't want to have to provide peer feedback. Oh, yeah. So for teachers too, another way of saving some time. And also it's just really good practice. And we're going to talk about this on our next podcast about the importance of reflection and metacognition. But you could integrate self-assessments, peer assessments, this 360-degree eval model, which allows learners to get feedbacks from multiple sources. And then guess what? You're not the only one doing it. In my design currently, I provide feedback on the first assignment so that I can really course correct any glaring gaps that I see. And then assignment 2 is all self and peer evaled. And then I come back and add to the self and peer in assignment 3. So learners, again, the same skills gaps can occur with our learners, right? I don't know how to provide feedback. I don't know how to integrate feedback. These are skills, people. And these are the things that are so important, like for us to move forward in a future where so many things are automated, right? Like feedback is important from a learning retention, memory, consolidation, like all that stuff. It's true. Getting feedback, thinking about that feedback, iterating stuff, like working on one project over time. These are all really good learning tools, okay? But beyond that, you actually learn skills in this process. And I would go so far as to say, like, some of the most essential skills that we should be focusing on developing in learners, whether you're an elementary school student, a high school student, a higher ed student, or an adult working in a professional context. The ability to give and receive feedback takes skills. Learners feel, I don't have them. Can we explicitly teach it? How can I source material and helpful resources that could help my learners better understand what it means to receive feedback, what it means to provide feedback? Like I say, this is happening all the time, right? Like this, and these are skill sets that many of us go into the workforce not having and have to deal with on the fly. Like you get your first performance review and it shatters you. And then you talk to all your friends and they're like, yeah, this is normal. Like this happens all the time. How are you going to deal with feedback? But still we have this stigma. So skills are one thing, stigma is the other. We talked last week or last time about psychological safety. The importance of creating belonging, trust. These, again, as educators who are learning designers, not just lecturers, I don't care how big your class is. I don't care if you're teaching online or not. I don't care if none of your students turn their cameras on, okay? This is part of your job description. Being a human being, understanding that the people that you're working with are human beings, and letting them know that they're in a place, engaging in an experience where they are supported. Whatever that looks like to each of them individually. And we have these with most often, unfortunately, token slides around accessibility. Is this, can you hear me okay? And do you find the resources accessible, the LMS landing page accessible? Do you find that you feel safe enough to speak honestly and to embrace the vulnerability, accept it, at the very least, accept the vulnerable spaces associated with feedback because you understand the importance of them. And we've talked about the skill set associated with them. Psychological safety, we need more professional development for educators. We need to integrate this in first pre-service education certificates, cultivating psychological safety in our learning environments. That is context specific, obviously, depending on who you're working with. Part of that is normalizing the revision process, right? So if you only make feedback summative and you're only telling students what they did right or wrong, and you frame it that way and it happens there, then what other story or perception is the student supposed to have other than that's criticism? And I'm going to embrace the things that they said I did well and try to let go of the things that they said I didn't do well. Maybe they hear things, obviously. It's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but it's not as harmonized a process as it could be if we created the culture in our learning environments, online, face-to-face, or otherwise, a combination of both. Normalizing the revision process, cultivating psychological safety, and modeling vulnerability, right? Being a human is being professional, because all professionals are people. What's hard about this? Let's talk about it. Let's name it. I talk about the peer review process and the self-evaluation process in week 1. People know it's coming. It doesn't surprise them. I explain the value of it. I provide resources around it. I'm there to answer questions about it, troubleshoot the technology because it's often difficult in the submission of these assignments and where do I find them? And they're already stressful enough. Being responsive to the questions associated with completing this work. Feedback loops keep good systems running. And the flip side of that is if a system is not running well, integrating feedback loops has the potential to course correct these systems. Let's take it seriously. And next week, we'll talk about how reflection and feedback, the reflective process and reflective practices are inextricably linked to these feedback loops. The Education Revolution podcast is produced in-house by community members. And I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Sangera. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and head over to my website to opt in for my newsletter for more ways to connect with some of these big ideas.